Thanks for watching Shotoku Tech. Please subscribe, share, and like. Thank you very much. So these rockets I make out of beer cartons, they're a real hit at the launch site. I've made several of them over the years. Each one of them is a unique flyer. I just want to show you some of the work that goes into making one of these. In the description for this video, I'll be sure to include a list of tools, materials, and lightweight procedure to help guide you. Whatever your favorite beverage is, you're looking for 24 packs, 30 packs, anything with a large enough side to yield a decent model rocket body tube. Here I'm using an aluminum angle to guide my Xacto blade. When you're cutting the sides that are going to make up the body tubes, you want to get rid of the fold parts so that it's just pure straight cardboard. Essentially, the size of the cardboard is going to determine the diameter of your rocket and the length of each section of the rocket tube. And you'll use multiple sections of these tubes to build up the length of the rocket. You're trying to build a overstable 3 fins and a nose cone, 4 fins and a nose cone rocket here. You really just can't go wrong because this will be super lightweight. There are some sides and end pieces that don't lend themselves well for making a tube, but they will yield cardboard for making other parts, like couplers between the body tubes, and I also wrap some of the cardboard material over basswood. Yeah, this is the only place I cheat, is I put basswood in the fins because you need a stiff fin. So you want to use all of the good cardboard that you can and make sure to recycle any of the scraps. Okay, so now we're going to work out determining just how big a diameter rocket we can make from this. Do recall that this cardboard may bend in one direction better than the other. So we see that this sheet is 13.5 inches wide. I've converted it to metrics and come up with the drawing I'm about to show you here. Yeah, see, the paper doesn't roll good in that direction, and it rolls easily in that direction. So you don't, what you'll find is it'll come out really wrinkly if you go in the wrong direction. I think the stuff is all coming off of a roll anyway. Okay, so some simple math: 13.5 inches times 25.4 millimeters. We're going to divide that by pi. Yeah, that 3.14 isn't just about pizza on the 14th of March. And so we can see we can go up to 109 millimeters in diameter. So 101 millimeters is around 4 inches, plus or minus a few tenths of a millimeter. So that's what we're going to target here, because math. Okay, so the first thing we need to build is the mandrels to roll the body tubes around. So these are really just these centering rings from the previous drawing, and you're going to want to use an inside diameter centering ring that's 2 to 4 millimeters less than your inside of the body tube, because you're going to use those rings and then you're going to wrap a layer of cardboard around the outside like you see there for the mandrels. So here I'm using the 3M spray adhesive, applying it to the back of the cardboard. We're going to cut out some circles out of there with an Xacto blade. If your cardboard's soft enough, you might be able to get away with scissors, but the difficulty there is you don't want to introduce any folds or any nicks or anything like that. So this is a mandrel here, and that's built up from that. And as you can see, the inside of the hole allows you to pull the mandrel out from inside of the tube. That's one of the handy things. Now, when we're making the tubes, you're going to take your cardboard sheets and try to introduce a curl to them. I have a rubber floor mat and a PVC pipe, so I'll actually roll back and forth on that. But in the old days when I first started out, I used an angle iron and just went back and forth till got a little curl going. Then you start rolling it, as we see here. You got to get a little bit tighter, tighter, tighter. Go slow, you don't want to fold the cardboard. Then you're going to place it inside the mandrel. Grab a couple of those mandrels, put it on the inside, and that's going to actually help it conform to that circular shape. This really helps if you let this sit for a day or two. So you want to process all your cardboard stock, get your body tube sides rolled up and in the mandrels so that they're building up their round shape. So here you can see a piece of cardboard that's been inside the mandrel for some time, and it just wraps right around it. You want to get your emery board and rough up the overlap where you're going to apply the glue. That'll help the glue take hold better, because you're using a wood glue and that requires porous material, and this is a pretty thick plastic printed over this cardboard, so you have to rough it up a little bit. You're going to hold it in place after you've applied the glue, sometimes a minute or so. You might use rubber bands. Now you see how the mandrels are not going to stay in there forever. You want to take those out so you can use them again and again and build enough tubes to make your rocket. There you see that nice seam of a tube that I've already built. So we're going to talk nose cones now, and this really is the most complicated. It's the hardest part. There's a lot of moving parts here. You need a shoulder to the nose cone that can insert into the body tube. You need a bulkhead that prevents the nose cone from sliding into the body tube. And then you need the cone itself, and it has to be relatively well attached to the shoulder and the bulkhead so that it doesn't fly apart. And in the old days, I used to try to do these perfect cones with a pointy tip, and it's really, really difficult to get this thick cardboard to roll into a cone shape and have that point come out. So I've kind of abandoned that and gone with using a conical projection and not making a complete cone, but making a partial cone. There's the outer shoulder. Then that shoulder has a tube centered on the inside, and then the conical projection wraps around the bulkhead and that center tube. And then I cap off the center tube with a half of a styrofoam sphere from Michael's to give you that nice rounded shape. It looks a lot like, kind of has that familiar spacecraft shape you're used to seeing. So how do we get that conical projection? Basically, I have to remind myself how I do this every time, but if you were to make a complete cone, that dimension there determines the diameter, the outside diameter of your circle, and then the actual length of the cone that you desire determines the inside diameter of this arc that we're going to cut. We're going to cut an arc, essentially, out of these circles that represents what we need to wrap around that inner tube and the bulkhead to create that partial cone, that conical projection in essence. So once we have that worked out, then we see the total diameter of this big arc, and we divide that by the diameter of our rocket to come up with a ratio. And then we multiply that ratio times 360 degrees, and that's going to tell us how much of this giant circle we need to cut out to create the conical projection that will wrap into being the nose cone. So here comes the calculator. Our rocket's 101 millimeters in diameter divided by that total diameter of that big circle. That's your ratio. Multiply that times 360 and we get 89 degrees. And so that's going to look like this by the time we finish manipulating the drawing. Here we go. And we're going to paste that, use the 3M glue on the back of the cardboard and cut that out of a sheet. So here you see how the fin is constructed. There's a sheet of basswood with the cardboard wrapped around it. The trailing edge is just bare wood, but the leading edge is the cardboard. These are through-the-wall fins, very sturdy. And you could use this fin guide to mark your through-the-wall slots on your body tubes. You got to be real careful here. You want to make sure you build up your motor mount and dry fit the motor mount into the tube and use that to hold the tube shape while you're cutting out your through-the-wall fin slots. Again, you can use that fin guide to mark your tube and then use a piece of angle iron to guide your blade as you cut those slots. Got to install some launch lugs. Here's another one we're looking at. Same construction, basswood, wrapped with cardboard, through the wall fins. Use the fin guide, dry fit the motor mount, and cut your fin slots. I did sort of gloss over motor mounts, whether you choose to roll your own motor mount tube and thrust rings or use stock tubing and parts for that is fine. But you know you can custom cut your own centering rings because we've been doing that so far. Well, we're at 10 minutes right now, and I don't think videos should be much longer than that. I hope you've seen something new or interesting or fun, and I hope to see you out on the range with one of your very own. All right, thanks again.